We're two rookie real estate investors pursuing our dream of financial freedom through real estate. I'm Josh Koth.
I'm Jack Haas.
The purpose of this podcast is to share our wins and losses as we build our portfolio, in hopes that we can help some of you, our fellow real estate rookies. All right, Jack, welcome to episode 1 of Real Estate Rookies Podcast. Real estate investing rookies. I should probably say it right, huh?
This is kind of exciting. This is something new for us, so we're just adding it and trying to share what we learn along the way.
Exactly, and we're both, as the podcast title implies, real estate rookies. We've both been investing for a year or less each, and we've learned a ton in that time. So we thought, man, if we'd be sitting having lunch together, and we said we should have recorded that because we just, there was a ton of good information in that conversation. So we decided to do it, and here we are recording episode 1 of Real Estate Investing Rookies, REI Rookies. So we thought we'd take an episode each and kind of tell our stories. So I'm Josh, and we're going to start with Jack this time around. So Jack, I'll kind of interview you a little bit. How did you even think real estate was a way to achieve financial freedom?
Well, I think it really started with some of the conversations we had at work over our lunch hour. But we explored a lot of things, including storage units and everything. We've been talking about this type of thing for quite a while.
So what was it about real estate that caught your eye as opposed to inventing, the next iPhone or something you see on Shark Tank? A lot of people have get-rich-quick ideas about inventing a product of some kind. What was it about real estate that made you think that was a viable way of achieving financial freedom?
Well, I think most people have the same story. They listen to or they've read Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Mm-hmm.
In my case, I consumed that book in like a week, if not less. And then I read it again, like back to back. It's the first book that I've ever done that to.
That's so funny that you mentioned that book, as we've heard that on many other podcasts, because we're both avid consumers of other real estate podcasts. That's how we've gleaned a lot of our knowledge. And universally, that book is referenced, and it's insane how, there's a lot of real estate books out there, but that one in particular sparks people into thinking that it's possible to escape the rat race, achieve financial freedom. And for some reason, that book in particular, even though it doesn't necessarily go into the specifics of how to do so with real estate, it just makes you think that there's something else out there that it's achievable.
Yeah, then there's no question to that. And then on top of that, we're kind of there was a career transition, if you will, going on during at
You mean
work.
when I got fired?
That would be the situation there.
Yeah, that brings a little clarity into things, doesn't it?
Yeah, it sure does. When an entire team is let go, you start to question the stability of anybody's day job, and how secure is it really?
Exactly. And I learned that firsthand. I'll tell that in my story at the next episode. But, you have a very secure, in air quotes, day job right now. And most people just go through life thinking, well, I'll just do 40 years of that, retire, and maybe I'll have 2 or 3 jobs in that time. But what made you think that I should probably have some other options?
It's the stability of it. What would happen in the situation right now? I'm in a family, single income family, and what would happen if I was in a situation where I went to work the next day and my whole team was let go, or what have you? You're in a situation where I want to be in a place where if something like that happens, my monthly obligations are covered.
Yep, exactly right.
And then on top of it, when that happened, I was lucky enough to move from a vendor role, if you will, to a full-time employee at the company I'm at. And it reminded me to now, well, we got to take a look at where the retirement sits, because now you're in a situation where they're doing employee matching and what have you. And looking at my meager retirement made me take a look at where everybody is at, standards wise across the United States. And right now it was shocking that I was actually ahead of a lot of people are sitting today. I mean,
which you were, but if you want a real reality check, go to one of those retirement forecast calculators, enter in what you're making, what you want to live on when you retire, how many years you have to retirement, and it'll tell you how far off you are from your goal, or if you even have a shot of achieving it. And that typically also means a drastic reduction in lifestyle when you retire, if you want to achieve, any sort of relaxation.
Well, that's exactly the case. I mean, today, right now, a person who's 65, 70 years old on average has got about $150,000 in savings, where they would need actually $1.7 million if they wanted to live on just a simple $55,000 a year salary.
Yep, and that's the one switch that flipped for me, reading Rich Dad Poor Dad and just other real estate investors, learning from them. If you try to save up that giant pile of cash and through 40 years of working and live off the interest that spins off, that's typically not going to result in end in a very good result. You're probably going to have to reduce your lifestyle drastically, and most people won't even get there. And best case scenario is you get there and then you have to reduce your lifestyle and live on about typically, 2/3 of what you were making. Whereas when I retire, I want to hopefully have an improved lifestyle, not a worse one.
Yeah. So in the end, real estate investing is one of the few avenues, like you had said before, how many of us are really going to hit those home runs associated with making the next iPhone or making the next Spotify or making the next whatever app. The likelihood there is very low.
That feels like a lottery ticket, like a lottery win, as opposed to something that's actually achievable.
Right. So when we're taking a look at all of those numbers, there was absolutely no way for me to save to retirement. There's just no way.
Yep.
And
Exactly.
decided that I had to do something about it.
So now we had conversations about real estate. No. So how did you think it was going to be possible? Because it's one thing to dream about, I'll just buy a bunch of rental properties, but that's point Z, all the steps in between. How did you think that was going to unfold?
Well, I think the big misconception that I had going in was the amount of money that was needed to get started. Because really, it doesn't take as much as people might think.
Right.
You don't have to save up enough to buy a rental property. If you can get a really good job or a good relationship with a lender, or it's really a people business as much of an acquisition business.
And that's, the power of leverage, which we'll get into in future episodes. That's such a huge wealth multiplier that you need to take advantage of, especially when you're starting out with not a ton of cash. Ideally, that is the way to start out if you have a ton of cash. It's much easier. But I think through having less, it actually develops your skills more because you're forced to do more with less. So, okay, keep going on your story.
Well, that's really going to be it. I mean, I was just absolutely convinced that it was really a huge mental shift we have been fed the idea of saving and squirreling money away for, frankly, all of our lives. I mean, if any financial education was provided to me in school, it was focused on putting stuff into savings account and hoping it grows enough
And then just spending a little less. Don't get that latte.
Yeah. I'm going to call it the myth of compound interest.
Right.
As far as I'm concerned, it's an utter myth because, frankly, money in an account of any kind, I have never seen it significantly grow.
And a lot of those predictions are based on very, very optimistic, if not perfect, forecasts, which, as we know, in typical paper investments, you're not going to see those, regular high rates of return in order to get the ideal amount of compounding required to actually get you to your goal. And yeah, that's so crucial. In reality, typically people don't see that. And especially riding the ups and downs of the stock market, where people would typically invest in mutual funds, getting those guaranteed stable rates of return is very, very difficult.
And then we see those situations where we put money into an IRA or a savings account of some kind, and we hope for the best. Mm-hmm. We don't really know what's in those accounts.
Right.
We don't know what our holdings are. We don't really have a lot of say or anything that we physically can do to drive the value there other than, keep adding money to it in the up markets and the down markets. It's all going to even off and you're going to, in the end, see a benefit.
Yep. Yeah, that's such a crucial point because when people, you get naysayers in your family asking, well, isn't real estate investing risky? Well, and I respond with, well, at least I have some control over what happens there. As opposed to in my mutual fund, I didn't even know what companies were in it, much less have any say in how they were run. I don't exactly know what's going on in the boardroom at GE, or much less have any control over how they vote and how they spend their money. So I felt much more comfortable being in control of my cash and my investments and what I was doing. And real estate's one of the only methods where you can have that type of control.
And you can adjust depending on the market.
Mm-hmm.
So if during a down market that we are just coming out of, that's ideal. That's a dream come true for a real estate investor because that's when you can take advantage of some deals.
Yep. And just so any listeners know, we're based in Fargo, North Dakota. So we have kind of a unique economy up here, which we'll get into in future episodes, and how we've adjusted to that marketplace. And how we make adjustments based on what's happening at the time, because you do have to be nimble and respond to the different market conditions as far as for rental markets or the retail market or wholesale market or anything else. So we'll get into that in future episodes as well.
Yeah, but that's a really good and valid point. There's a lot of people who get into the real estate market and we've seen this even locally, where they get very focused on buy and hold. They get very focused on flipping or wholesaling, and they ignore the rest of the market and what's actually going on.
Yep. And it's so crucial to evaluate what's going on and know your numbers so you can, make adjustments. And once you accumulate a certain amount of properties, you need to see which ones are performing, which ones aren't, and then take action on the ones that aren't and to improve them or get rid of them and transition them into higher performing assets. So this whole podcast is going to be talking all about our journey, what we've learned in the last year, what we're learning every day. We're going to bring in some guests that we know locally, people involved in the real estate business here, bring their perspective. And hopefully, every week we'll deliver lots of nuggets of knowledge to you guys as we learn them too. And frankly, us talking about this to people really helps us understand it better as well. So that's, one selfish component for doing a podcast. I would have loved to have talked to some people starting out right when we did as well, and kind of share that journey. So I know there's lots of people getting into real estate investing. So hopefully we can all learn together and that's what we'll do. So throughout the episodes here, we're going to have some regular segments. We're going to have our Twitter account set up, Do you know what that is, Jack?
Yeah, it's just REI Rookies.
REI Rookies, so at REI Rookies. So if you have any questions for us, send them to there and we'll answer questions. And like I said, we're an open book. We don't claim to have all the answers. We're no gurus by any means. We're learning right along with everyone else. But if we've picked up some knowledge along the way, we're happy to share it. We're going to have a lesson of the week, as we call it. That'll be something real estate specific that we've learned. And then another segment called the Coach's Corner, where we're going to speak to a personal development tip or a book or a quote or something that's inspired us. I guess for this week, our tip is pick up Rich Dad, Poor Dad. If you haven't already, you probably have if you're interested in real estate at all. But like Jack said, I read that book. I've read it twice this year also. It's a great refresher if you haven't listened to it in a while. So that's kind of our first episode. Look for one every week from us. This has been the REI Rookies Podcast. Remember, get off the bench and
get into the game. How about 3, 2, 1, lunch? 3, 2, 1,
lunch.
3, 2, lunch.
This has been.
This has been the REI Rookies. That's really hard to say.
I know, yeah.
The REI Rookies Podcast.